Last night I did a show, something like 45 minutes long, on what the world would be like if we actually disintegrate into chaos. Now, there's a number of things that could cause a disintegration of our society as we know it into chaos. One of the things would be something that would come awful close to happening just a very few days ago. The sun released a flare and shot it toward the Earth, but it didn't shoot it directly toward the Earth. It was kind of like a glazing slide, a side blow to the Earth. And it affected our radio signals and stuff like that to a certain degree. But now back in the 1800s, the sun shot in one of them directly at the Earth. And it hit the Earth with tremendous force right on the United States. In fact, it's called the Carrington event. You can look it up. Back in those days, we wouldn't have even known it happened because it doesn't have any effect on, when one of these events happens, it doesn't have much of effect on us. We just don't even know that it happened. We don't feel it, we don't see it. But electronics, they just get fried. And the Carrington event was so strong that the telegraph wires that they had back then, that they used to carry information through, all got fried. Now, if we were to get that kind of an event today, and we almost did last week, the side of the Earth that's facing the sun would be, bam, just everything goes black. Instantaneously, everything goes black. All of your computers go down, your car won't work, nothing works. It would be the biggest, bam, hit the Earth, just like that. It would just hit the Earth that quick. It would be an electromagnetic pulse from hell. It would burn out everything. Burn out the electronic cables, burn out it would fry all of our systems on the side of the Earth that's facing the solar flare. Now, the other side of the Earth, because half of the Earth would get hit with this thing, the other side of the Earth would be unaffected. They would still have their power grid and everything. But because the whole Earth is interconnected now, everything would go down in the end. Because if half of the Earth was taken out, it's just, the whole thing would go down because it's all interconnected now. All of our societies are interconnected. And so this would not be a good thing, and we would go into this chaos that I'm talking about. That's one thing that could cause it. Now, there's another thing that could cause it, and a lot of you probably don't know anything about. And I'm going to surprise you. Surprise, surprise. There's an island not far off the coast of Africa that's got this volcanic mountain on it. Now, in the 1950s, this volcanic mountain started to slide toward the ocean. It slid like 15 meters or something toward the ocean. But it stopped. The volcano rumbled and made the mountain slide toward the ocean. You say, well, what does that have to do with us? You know, you're like, well, what is it? I mean, that's nothing. I'm going to tell you what it has to do with you. Right next to that, there's a very deep spot in the ocean, right next to the volcano. Right? I think it's in the Cayman Islands, anyway. There's a very deep spot in the ocean, right next to the volcano. And the ocean's extremely deep right there, just for some stupid reason. And the mountain is extremely high. It's thousands and thousands of feet high, and there's a tremendous volume of earth in this thing, of cubic meters of earth in it. It started to slide into the ocean there, back in the 1950s, but it stopped, and there's a big crack in the ground there. All the volcano has to do is rumble again, and this thing will slide into the ocean because it's ready to go. It almost did. It's just sitting there. It's like a rock you ever seen a rock that's sitting on top of a hill, and it's kind of like a big boulder, and it's just kind of like ready to fall? If a bunch of kids come along, they can push it down the hill. Well, that's what this thing's like. It's ready to fall into the ocean. Now, I'm going to tell you what it'll do if it falls into the ocean. If it slides into the ocean, it would create a giant tidal wave, a tsunami, that would come racing across the Atlantic. And it would hit the entire east coast of the United States of America, all the way from Maine to the tip of Florida, with a wave that would be absolutely, and this would be about 6 hours after it falls in. It's in the Canary Islands, by the way. That's where it is, Canary Islands. If it would fall into the ocean and create this tsunami like we've never ever seen before. A tsunami would be like 400, it would just be massive tsunami. The tsunami that would hit the shores, say in Daytona Beach or New York or anything, would be like hundreds of feet high, and it would just come roaring inland, and it would take out everything all the way inland for massive, all the way up from Maine to Florida. It would create such a disaster. And not only that, the tsunami would go down and it would hit South America too. Places like, I guess, Brazil or whatever, you know. Cuba would get it. Everybody would get it. All the way. Even us here in Nova Scotia, we would get it. In Canada, we would get it. The Eastern Canada would get it. It would be such a disaster that it would take out everything almost. It would put so much disruption into the system, something like this, that we wouldn't be able to recover for years. So there's a problem, right? I'm now naming a few of these problems. Another problem is the ice melting down in Antarctica. It's already melting. It is melting. Nobody can doubt that it's melting. It's calving off into the ocean, giant icebergs, and it's starting to head toward the landmass of Antarctica. And if that ice breaks off that's on the landmass of Antarctica and slips down into the ocean, it's going to raise sea levels. And most of the cities on Earth are near the coastal regions. Would cause tremendous disruption and put our society into chaos if that were to happen. Any sort of an asteroid coming in. We've had myriads of near misses lately of asteroids bigger than school buses. Some of them are a kilometer across. If they hit the Earth, it would extinguish all life. And we've had a number of near misses of these things lately. You know? The volcano, Yellowstone, building up pressure constantly, and they know that NASA is trying to come up with some sort of a crazy solution to fix it, because they know it's going to blow probably within the next 20 years or so. And it would just take out our whole society. So there's a number of things that can come that can actually take our whole society down in a moment's notice, and we just didn't even know it was coming. You know? But the biggest of all of these things, the most likely to occur, that's going to create a devastating problem and shockwaves through our society, is a disaster that we've created ourselves through just poor management, misplanning, and also the creation of these stupid central banks who are a blight to humanity. Right? A financial disaster unparalleled in the history of the world that could actually cause the demise of mankind, and they're not even fixing it. They have they don't want to fix it because of greed. They want to keep this actually going as long as they can because of greed, because they're able to feed their buddies with money. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and they're actually enjoying this status that they create for themselves of being uber rich. 1% of the population owns 99.9% of the wealth. I mean, it's just it's unfair. It's an unfair equilibrium, and they've created this system for themselves to accomplish this goal or this purpose. The bankers went out to Jekyll Island, and they sat down around a table, and they figured out how to screw us all over all of us. They figured out how to do all of us, and how to mess it up so that they get all the money and we get all the work. But they've created a system in doing so that's a massive Ponzi scheme, and we're reaching the end of this Ponzi. Ponzi's always come to the same end or the same conclusion. Now, can we make this transition from the end of this Ponzi without the world coming to an abrupt screeching crash? Like, you ever heard cars' brakes come on and the car goes, and then in the end you hear the crash when it hits. without what they call a hard landing? Can we actually make a smooth transition between what we have now and some sort of a new system without the whole thing coming to a hard smack? Because it's that hard smack that I want to talk about. I want to talk about it and confront it head on with all of you as only as theoretical. Because right now it's just a theory that it could happen. It's never happened before, anything like this, that the world would disintegrate into chaos. I want to talk about things like how on earth could you survive longer? Because as long as you can survive, there's hope. You know? As long as you're alive, there's hope. And so how can you survive longer in this crisis, when this crisis occurred? And believe me, it would not be no picnic. It would be something like you see in the Walking Dead movies or something like that, you know, except probably no zombies. But they might as well be zombies if they're roaming around with guns and stuff and they're looking to loot you. They might as well be zombies. They're just as bad. You know, if the world disintegrates into chaos, there's no police anymore. And you got looters roaming around. And the looters are well armed. I mean, that kind of a world is in crisis mode. And the military, what would they be doing in this kind of a situation? This is hard to say. The military are your top, I'm going to call them your top preppers in the world, you know. They're prepped because they have to be prepared to fight a war, and they have to be prepared to create their own power source. They're the only ones that'll, in a situation like this, that'll still be taking hot showers and eating 3 meals a day, is the military, even if the system goes down. And so what will they be doing to try to restore the system and bring it back online again? Our biggest hope for actually, if we do have this kind of a crisis, our biggest hope is the military. To be able to, and not in a role of going to war, but in a role of restoring order out of chaos. Our biggest hope would be the military. And believe me, I believe personally that the military in this type of a crisis situation, when they're responding to it, they don't want you in their way. They don't want you causing any problems. They want to be able to get infrastructure back going again, get the power grid back online. If we have this kind of a crisis and chaos erupts, they will not be able to. Their first focus is going to be restoring order, the military, and they don't want anything getting in their way. They will give orders out. And they will function like a hive of ants that's trying to work. Now, if you've got a big nest of fire ants in your yard, and they're doing their thing inside their mound, they're working and they're doing their thing. And if you come along, stick your finger inside that mound, what are they going to do? The fire ants. They're going to let you have it. And this is the way the military is going to be if they're trying to restore order. If they're trying to get the power grid back on, and you come along and you're looting or something, or you're doing something that they don't want you to be doing, you're going to get it. Now, that being said, what would the military actually do to try to get this whole thing back up and running? Oh, I'm sure the first thing that they would be concerned with is getting power restored to the corridor areas. Because, okay, say the entire grid's down. Say we've had some sort of an electromagnetic pulse from hell from the sun. You know? They're going to work with the core part of the grid. The part that they're going to put part of the grid on, and part of the grid will still be off. And they're going to try to restore order to certain areas. And they're going to bring those areas under military control. You know, and then there's going to be other vast areas that there's no government whatsoever, military or whatsoever, and so those would be the Badlands. And this is a scenario right out of a science fiction, a post-apocalyptic science fiction movie is what we would have. But we would have areas where there would be order restored, and it would be under military governance. It would probably be a general would be in charge. And those areas of restored and order would probably grow as time progressed. And the people that live within those areas would be under the governance of that particular military. That's what would probably come in the years that go by after we're trying to restore order from some event like this. Say it's a big meteor from space or whatever. Or maybe just the financial system completely locking up to where our money don't work anymore whatsoever. Because we tried to switch all of our money over from cash into a digital system, and the digital system just freezes up and nobody knows who owns what because the derivatives all melted down. A total meltdown of the derivative market would send signals through the internet instantaneously, every which way, all monetary things, all monetary contracts would suddenly change. In other words, because this bank goes down, right, and their derivatives goes down. Let's just use a case example. Say it's Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank goes down, right, and their derivative book is extended out to all these other banks. Well, suddenly all these other banks have to take those assets that they had that are connected to Deutsche Bank, and suddenly they have to, there's a meltdown in Deutsche Bank. They have to take those derivative assets and they have to change the numbers on everything. And then all of a sudden the next bank finds out it's in trouble because it was relying upon those assets that the Deutsche Bank is holding, its holdings in Deutsche Bank. And then it goes down, and then what banks are connected to it? They go down, and then what banks are connected to them? They go down. And the whole thing starts to send these signals through the internet of who now, the new changes to who owns what. And there's so many signals coming through the internet of these changes that it actually, the system actually locks. The whole thing just locks. And nobody knows who owns what anymore because no transactions will go through. The financial system just becomes absolutely locked. And so in this type of a situation, all your trucking firms and everything else all the way across America and everywhere else are all linked into the banking system. They can't buy their fuel for their next run. Nobody's going to get paid. And nobody's going to bring no food to the grocery stores. And the trickle-down effect of all this would be, if the system entirely locks up like that, is nothing's going to work. Your credit cards aren't going to work. Your ATM cash machines aren't going to work. Your banks are just going to lock their doors. The trucking companies are just not going to bring food to the stores. After about 2 or 3 days, people would smash the glass out in the front of the store and take everything inside the store. And we would be in a Mad Max world. Seriously. And so, this is the kind of situation that these bankers have created for us as a possibility of this actually happening. Now, I'm not going to say this is actually going to happen. I'm just saying that they've created the possibility. We should not have to live under this, even under this possibility. There should be fall safes in place. There should be redundant systems in place to take over so that this kind of a situation couldn't possibly happen. But none of that is. The real reality is this situation can happen. And that there's a possibility it could happen. And so there's a lot of things that you can actually do if this situation were to happen to try to extend yourself so that you're going to survive. I mean, in this series that I'm talking just right now, actually I'm thinking about turning it into a series and talking about it more, but I'm just going to do 2 initial talking about this a little bit today and last night, and put 2 together, two parts to this particular one. But later I might actually do a series on it. later down the road, you know. But because it's a very interesting subject, and there's actually a lot to it, and I got realizing that I was talking about this last night, and I didn't even scratch the surface of the stuff that you would need to do. You know what I mean? That the old people used to know how to do all these things. And now they've just thrown us over to the wolves, and all we got's a stupid grocery store. It's always packed full, the grocery store, until it's not. Until there's nothing there. It's always got lots of goodies in there, and we just get reliant upon it. We just get like, we don't even keep a lot of food in our fridge because we say, well, our food will go bad. We just buy it as we need it. This is our tendency. Because we can always go to the grocery store and get more. Until we can't. Until some sort of a Carrington event comes. Or what's more likely is the financial system actually freezing up. You know? And there's only one actual, probably good thing about it is the financial system is something that I term the holiday effect. Could possibly stop this from happening. And basically what that is they would freeze the financial system up for a few days while the government would react and come in and then open it back up again and actually get it all back up and running again. So it would be like a car stalling. Picture the financial system as like a car going down the road. Your car would stall, and the car would pull over to the side of the road, you know. And you'd have to actually get out and go around and open the hood and check out and say, well, gee, there's nothing wrong with the car. I just think it flooded, you know. And you get in and restart the car and get it going again. And that's the only good thing about it, is the fact that they might be able to actually stall it during this deflationary spike event that I've been talking about. That's the stalling of the car. And them getting the car back up and running again is them dumping tremendous money in like they did in 2008. Why I say that this is a possibility that this could happen is because this is what happened in 2008. The system basically stalled, and they jump-started it and got it running again. They've kept it running until now. But this would be a bigger stall. This would be the same thing over again, except worse, and it would require a lot more money to get it back up and running again. And so I personally think the most likely scenario is just that the system is going to stall again like it did in 2008, except a little bit worse, and that they're going to jump-start the system and get it back up and running again. But this time when they jump-start the system, they are going to create a hyperinflation, and they're going to send gold and silver to the moon and cryptocurrencies to the moon in price. So anybody that's holding, anybody that's packing gold, silver, or cryptocurrencies, doesn't matter. So these gold bugs and silver bugs out there, you know, a lot of them really absolutely hate cryptocurrency. They hate it. They hate its guts. They see it as a competition or something. I don't know really what's going through their heads. They hate its guts. But I think they would be better off if they would dabble in it. If they would love their gold. Go ahead, love your gold and silver, you know. But dabble in the cryptocurrencies too. Play with them. Just play with them. And don't have such a firm, deadly attitude against them. Oh, they're a Ponzi scheme and all this stuff. Just play with them a little bit. Use your cigarette money, or use your lottery money that you'd normally spend on the lottery. Don't buy your lottery tickets anymore. Don't go out for that greasy meal, you know, that made you head home and you got indigestion all night and your stomach's growling you all night, and the next morning you wake up and you got to take antacids. You know, that greasy meal? Don't have that greasy meal. Go out and take that $30 or $40 that you'd spend on that greasy meal, and go and buy $40 worth of cryptocurrency with it. Just dabble with it. Just play with it a little bit. Don't go all in. Don't go all hog. Just play with it. Put your finger in the pie a little bit, so you got a little bit in there, a little bit of an investment, because you're going to find that in the end, the cryptocurrencies do just as good as the gold and silver in the end. And both are going to make you out like a bandit. You're going to make out like a bandit on the end on both ends, not just one end. If you just got gold and silver, you'll only make out like a bandit on one end of it. But if you got both, packing, if you're packing both, when this system comes down and the Fed has to come back in and have to reboot the system after she freezes, you're going to make out like a bandit. So here's what I'm going to show you right now is part 2, and it's the part I recorded last night. You know, this is the part I recorded this morning. This is part 1, and part 2 comes right up. So watch part 2 too. It's kind of interesting. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side. We'll see you later, and have a good day.